Okay, to preview this Celtics Hawks series, we've got our guy Jared Weiss, who covers the Boston Celtics for The Athletic. Jared, what's up, man?
What is up? Just got back from Celtics practice where Jalen Brown's hand is no longer completely falling apart, so they might actually be healthy.
Okay, did he fess up to what really happened with the hand situation?
No, he hasn't talked yet. I think he's going to talk tomorrow, so we'll see.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we got to get the real scoop on that. I'm not buying. Was it that he was working? What was the story that was told? It
He
was that he was
said
in
that
his.
he said he was watering his plants and knocked over a vase and then tried to pick it up, I guess without looking, and didn't realize that he cut his hand. Um,
Okay.
which
Okay.
is possible. And
Guess
what
it's
was funny was
possible.
the first thing that people found after this came out was like a month earlier he tweeted just water your plants. So
Yeah.
I think that was probably more figurative than literal, but it definitely makes it seem a little bit more plausible.
Oh my gosh. So the Celtics have not faced the Hawks in the playoffs since 2016 when they lost to Atlanta in 6 games. This season, Boston won all three matchups against Atlanta, including 2 games after Quinn Snyder became the head coach. Do the Hawks have any obvious advantages over the Celtics? Is there any reason to not expect a sweep in this series?
I would say first off, there was 2 wins, and then the last game of the season was just an exhibition match that the score
Sure.
didn't matter in.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but the I think the Hawks will win one game in this series because they can expose Boston's offensive rebounding issues. They have a dynamic guard who can at least like get wherever he wants, and if Trey catches fire and he's able to spray it out, and the other guys are catching fire. I mean, they're probably going to have at least one night where they're just shooting out of their minds and they're winning on the glass. So, one of the things that's really tricky for Boston is deciding whether to start Derek White or Rob Williams
Hmm.
because Rob Williams came back from knee surgery in middle December, and it took him a while until he was starting again. He started next to Al Horford for probably about like a month or two, I think, and then he got hurt and missed 3 or 4 weeks with a hamstring strain, and then wasn't starting again after that. He started that the last week of the season. He started their last 2 games against Toronto. So I don't know if that indicates that they're back towards playing their double big lineup, but against Clint Capella, it's like Rob Williams is really important. We just saw Clint Capella have 20 plus rebounds in that playing game. He basically won the game on the offensive glass for them. So you really could use Rob out there, but then you don't have Derek White, who's probably your best defender against Trey Young, along with Marcus Smart. So there's a lot of push and pull there. So it'll be interesting to see how Missoula goes about it. I feel like Atlanta, we understand their lineup much more clearly than we do with Boston's.
So, in your series preview, you compared Al Horford to a Pokemon, evolving each postseason, becoming a different player. What do you think makes Horford such a pivotal player for the Celtics' playoff hopes?
Well, his Pokemon trainer, obviously. Um, you know, okay. So Horford, every single year, he is like a very finesse player in the regular season, and then playoffs come, and it's like he like sniffs some smelling salts, and he just goes absolutely haywire. He's super physical. He's running on every single play. He's shooting better, although he shot great this year, so I don't know if he can shoot any better than that. But like every year, Horford has completely changed his best skills are different in the postseason than they are in the regular season. And he was able to sustain it last year through the first 3 rounds, kind of faded in the finals. So it's a big question mark and also before that year, he was playing for the Thunder or really not playing for the Thunder. And so he had that huge layoff of tons of time to rest and recover. While this season, he only had a couple months. So you do wonder if he's still going to be able to maintain that steam throughout the playoff run. But he also didn't play a ton this year. Like they sat him a lot. They rested him on back to backs. He barely like I don't know if he would have qualified for any awards this year. He kept his minutes relatively low or his total minutes. So he probably should be sufficiently rested to continue to do the Horford Pokemon evolution like he does every single year. Um, and when he does that, one, it allows them to not rely on Rob Williams to be their presence at the rim. It allows them to play 5 out. They're better offensively when they have a 5 out system. That's been the case for them all season long. Last year, they had a better rhythm finding Rob Williams for dunks and drop offs and rolls and stuff like that. It's not happening a ton this year. He's getting most of his baskets on putbacks or some of the kind of dunker spot drop offs. But like they tend to play better offensively with Horford out there and have a better balance. But obviously, when Rob is out there, their defense has just been the best in the NBA over the last few months.
Now, did you have a specific Pokemon in mind when you compared Al to a Pokemon?
I always thought of him as like a Venusaur, Bulbasaur to Venusaur kind of evolution
Okay,
because
okay.
like
Yeah.
from I mean I was more of a Smash Bros guy than a Pokemon guy, but like I remember in Smash Bros Venusaur, his like big move was he would just like rumble on the ground and like make an
Yeah.
earthquake happen. And Horford's a very like plodding ground bound player. Although maybe that's actually a bad example because in the playoffs he starts getting up in the air. So maybe he's acting more like a Charizard in the playoffs, really.
Because I actually did consult my local Pokemon expert. I gave him, the qualities about Al Horford. I said, who does this line up with? You got to let me know. He picked a Pokemon never heard of, Hariyama, who he says is big, wise, and strong. Those are some of the qualities I had given him. I actually found an article from 2016. Shout out to Jeremy Carl, who did Pokemon characters for every single Celtics player, and he picked
Wow.
Kangaskhan, which is a pretty cool name for Pokemon. So if
Okay.
we got any Pokemon heads out there, hey, let us know.
Let us
Who do
know.
you think Al Horford is?
You got
I
any
mean
Poke
Horford
comps out there?
I mean, Horford, if I had to pick anyone, I don't know if I'd pick a animalized version of a ruthless dictator warlord, but um
He's also a kangaroo, and he has a baby in his pouch, symbolizing that he's a little bit older. He has a
well,
child.
Horford did have his son on the bench handing out towels in that Atlanta game, so
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
maybe it does
there we
work.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
might
mean,
that might be a good one.
yeah, I mean Horford at his best, he's really a chancy. He's just giving out gifts to everybody, really.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I think we landed on it. That's pretty good. I like that one.
I want to have this conversation for 30 minutes.
Can we can we move on to Marcus Smart as a Pokemon? No. For okay, so
Wait,
for a
hold on.
veteran
I
team.
don't.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
I
go
don't
ahead.
think I've ever been on a podcast where someone took a stupid joke I made in an article and extrapolated it out to an entire segment. So you deserve a Pod Emmy award for that for sure, or a Webby
Well,
award for
thank you,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So a veteran team like Boston, there's not a ton of question marks heading into the playoffs outside of Robert Williams' health. Head coach Joe Mazzulla has become somewhat of a target, however, being a first-time head coach in the playoffs. Do you think any of the criticism of Mazzulla during the regular seasons were they valid, and could they be relevant during the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a kernel of truth in coaching criticisms, but I think most people that complain about coaches don't really know what they're talking about because, like, one, there's so much layer to the coaching that we don't see, and two, as much as they might make a decision, it's like the players might not execute their decision as expected, and then like, is it really fair to blame the coach every time they don't get exactly what they're supposed to out of their players? So, but I mean, Missoula did a good job. Like 57 wins is pretty decent, I would say. So I think there's a couple things. One, his timeout philosophy, which he has like a more coherent, structured, and detailed philosophy behind that. But it's he's always been kind of process and trust oriented, where it's like he wants to give his team a chance to work things out. And that was mostly a growth exercise over the course of the year. He has kind of tightened it up a little bit more as the season has gone on. In the playoffs, you're not really supposed to be learning lessons, right? It's like every game is pretty crucial. Maybe against Atlanta you can afford it, but second round they're probably facing Philadelphia. It's like it's go time. You can't drop a game there. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much more does he try to seize control over everything. And then also his offensive coaching style, he'll a lot of the time either not make a play call and he'll just literally just like conduct with his hands and like wave everybody to go and stuff like that, or he'll call a play set as they're bringing the ball down court and everybody has to kind of get aligned. It can slow things down a little bit. And so, Marcus Smart today actually talked about how their offense is really focused on finding cross matches. I mean, a lot of teams are doing that these days, and sometimes they play too fast and they actually don't identify the cross match they can create and target that. And so I think Joe doing that is a lot of him like making sure they find the cross match they want. And so I wonder, I have no idea honestly, but I'm really curious to see, is that going to be better in the postseason when like more teams are trying to do that? Or is that going to slow down his team and take away their rhythm and their freedom and their flow and actually hinder them?
You mentioned you gave us the update on Jalen Brown, and we just talked about Robert Williams' health. What's the update on Marcus Smart? Because I know he had gotten somewhat of an injury at the end of the season. Is he good?
Yeah, he pinched a nerve in his neck. He said he like got like some whiplash or a hit to the neck in against Philly late in March, I think, or was that beginning of April? Beginning of April, I think. And so he like couldn't turn his neck for a good week or so. He was sitting out of practice. He was just doing recovery work. He said today that he's close to 100%. And what was funny was right after that, he said, it's actually been a long time since I can even say that. So that's pretty good for me. Because if you think about it, smart, it's like he tore his thumb diving for a loose ball right before the playoffs one time. It's like he's like flown out of the air and shattered everything in his body like 10 times during the playoff runs over the years. It's like he tends to be limping into the end of the season. And at least right now, I mean, the neck might be an issue, but like all of the lower body stuff seems to be okay. So I think he's in a pretty good spot.
So the Celtics are a much deeper team this year, and they have a pretty clear top eight. Outside of those top eight, so thinking about guys like Hauser, Muscala, Pritchard, Griffin, who do you think has the best chance to make a meaningful impact during this playoff run?
Well, so the funny thing is, number 8 isn't even set in stone. Grant Williams has been in and out of the rotation throughout the year. It seems like he's kind of really solidified his spot as the third big again. And in the playoffs, the matchups that they're going to have in the second and third rounds, it's like they really need Grant Williams. He's crucial against Embiid. He's crucial against Giannis. So he's probably going to be getting a ton of time anyway. So then after that, it comes down to Hauser or Blake Griffin, I think. Hauser, they get him out there, they get him running around screens. Some nights he hits 4 threes and he's really impactful, but then also gets targeted on the other end. I don't think he's much of a risk for mismatches against Atlanta because they don't have that many wing, like they don't really have wing scorers. They're going to take him off the dribble and rise up against him. And he's pretty good at staying in front of guys, but Trey is too quick for him. Murray probably can bully him and still get to his mid-range pull-up that he likes. And so, maybe those guys will try to go at Hauser if they're in the game at the same time. But he, generally the guys that really, do better against Hauser, Atlanta doesn't have a lot of those guys. And then Blake Griffin, just other end of the spectrum from like where Rob Williams is, where it's like Rob Williams is a high flying guy. He's he's trying to play above the rim. Blake has been really good about being solid below the rim this year, making good decisions offensively and defensively. He's limited with his speed, so it's like I don't know if he's going to be able to go up against Capella and Collins, who can play up there. But there's been a lot of times this year where they've gone to Blake to be kind of the like the guy that kind of brings focus and intensity back to the team. And the last big game that he had for this team was actually in Atlanta a few weeks back, where he was diving for loose balls, he was making all these hustle plays and kind of reignited the team as they were starting to blow the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of Blake in this series.
I want to ask you about Jason Tatum. He kind of had a rough finals, and so I'm curious what you've seen just being around him and maybe what you think his mentality will be going into this particular playoff run. I think people give him a hard time and don't quite realize that he's still only 25 years old. Like this is still a guy, and he just turned 25. Like this is still a really young player that's still kind of finding himself in the league, even though he averaged like it's like 38 and 5 over the course of this season. Like he's still just ridiculous. But I'm just curious what your expectations for him kind of mentally are for this playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, the standards have been so high for him and Jaylen Brown because they were contending as soon as they got to the league, basically. So, they were in their third or fourth years and they were basically running the offense in a contender. And just, it's extremely rare that anyone's ever been able to pull that off. Like, those are like all time greats were the ones that really could actually handle that pressure. And Tatum is, I mean, up until the finals last year, he was great. Really, the first few games of the finals, he had some really good games in there. The
Sure.
first game, Golden State took all of his shots away. He had like 10 or 11 assists and actually like was a huge part of why the Celtics won that game. That game 4 where they blew it, blew their chance in the fourth quarter. I think he was playing pretty well, if I remember correctly, up until that point. So like Tatum has put together most of the body of work. It just hasn't done it at the very highest level. A lot of guys when they get to the finals, they don't do well the first time around. So Tatum, I think, was, I don't know if he was embarrassed or pissed off by how that went. He was frustrated because he was hurt and they were downplaying his wrist injury issues. And so I think he's looking at this as a chance for redemption, as a chance to prove himself. I think he's also a little annoyed that he was a front runner for MVP early on and then kind of faded in that conversation. He'll probably finish 4th or 5th, but like, there's clearly a gap between him and those top 3 guys. So I think he's looking at this as his chance to be like, all those guys are in front of me, but Tatum might have to beat Embiid, Giannis, and Jokic to win the championship this year. So I think, especially if they face Denver in the finals, it's like it's him being like, I can literally beat every single person ahead of me in the MVP race and tell everybody I'm the real MVP, and set himself up next season to be the front runner for MVP. So
Hey,
I think
gotta catch them all with the MVP, top 5 MVP guys, right?
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
So, maybe he'll go full Charizard and he's a flamethrower from deep.
That's
and
right.
He's flying over everybody. He's a very pterodactyl-like frame to him also. So
Yeah.
although isn't
True.
there a pterodactyl Pokemon, right?
Yes,
I mean,
there
has to be.
There's a lot
My
of
kids
them,
have
right?
my kids have so many Pokemon cards. There just has to be.
Yes,
There
it's
has to be a
Aerodactyl.
There
Yeah,
we go.
there you go.
Aerodactyl.
There you
He's
go.
very aerodynamic. So, I mean, I think Tatum's in a good spot right now. He's been playing really well for the past few weeks after that post All-Star slump. His shot has been good. He's in a rhythm, getting to the rack. His mid-range game has been solid. And like he's always been good about stepping up to the moment and playing with more intensity. So, I mean, I think Tatum's going to be fine, and they're probably going to be really good because he's going to be at his best.
Okay, Jared, it's time to make a prediction. How many games are you giving the Hawks? You mentioned like a gentleman's sweep at the beginning of this. Is that your call?
I think I'll give them one. I think they'll win like game 3 or 4 at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then probably get the floor wipe with them at game 5 back in Boston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense as well. Al?
I'll go 4.
Sweep!
Yeah, I don't believe in the Hawks.
Yeah.
But very impressive play and win on the road. I'll give them that.
It was. Got all the bounds in the play and win.
I mean, it was impressive in that they won the game. It wasn't impressive in that like Miami wasn't really playing. Like they weren't rebounding at all. I mean, honestly, Miami's defense wasn't terrible there, right? Like they got plenty of stops. They just didn't rebound any of them. And there were a few like long rebounds that kind of went out of their control, but they were going up against a team with like 4 guards, and Atlanta has like 4 guys that are taller than like the 4th tallest guy or the 4 on Miami. So that just seemed a little unfair.
Yeah. Go read Jared at The Athletic. You can listen to him on the Daily Ding. We're doing those shows live now on YouTube. So go check out all of those episodes. Jared, thanks so much for coming on.